Thank you for tuning in to the best parenting show on the internet, Post Daily Dose.
It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post.
Good evening, Facebook family. Welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose with me, your trusted parenting advisor, Facebook guide, and servant on the healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Brian+Post. Good evening, everyone. Hope you have a fantastic whack-a-mole Wednesday. Is what we call it on Morning Motivation with Big Papa. Whack-a-mole Wednesday, and we're ready to tackle Thursday. So I had a question come in from one of our viewers. And Emily asked about my thoughts on open adoption. So Emily and her family have had a newborn from the time he was 20 days old, and now it's going on 6 months. Sound prompts. Thank you. How's that? Is that better? Hopefully sound issues these days. Maybe it's my phone. So Emily and her family have had an infant from the time he was 20 days old, and now they've had him for 6 months. And just recently, the social worker, fantastic. Thank you, Rhonda May Rorta. That's my homie right there. You can't hear me? Big Papa. Well, someone's hearing me. Oh, Debbie said sounds good. All right, Deanne. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm trying for you, Mama. That's my homegirl, Rhonda May Rorta. Y'all need to check out Rhonda if you haven't looked at her adoption in their voices, stories of interracial adoptees. Fantastic trilogy. That girl's done wrote 3 books. Trilogy on adoption and transracial adoption, and all very good stuff. So Emily and her family have had an infant from the time he's 20 days old. They've now had him 6 months for 6 months, and recently the social worker said you should start giving thoughts to how you feel about open adoption. And my sense is that created a little bit of anxiety for you, Emily, and so I'm glad you posed the question for Big Papa, because it's a very common question. And so I'm just going to give you my thoughts on the matter. First of all, Emily went on to say that there is a presumed father and that the mother has not had any contact and they've not been able to reach her. There is a maternal grandmother and I think 5 half siblings. So this is a very interesting thing. So first of all, I'm like, well, why would the social worker even bring up open adoption? That stirs some angst in me. You've got a couple, a family who they've had this child for the last 6 months. Both T. Barry Brazelton and Stanley Greenspan say that a child who's been in a home 6 months or longer, you absolutely should not disrupt that placement if you don't have to, because attachment is already set in. Bonding patterns have already set in. So I'm just curious from a social work perspective, what's the motivation for saying to a family you should consider open adoption? Because in this instance, I don't think that there's anything to even consider. It's not a matter of an open adoption. It's not a matter of a closed adoption. You're getting ready to adopt this baby, and as far as you know, as of this point in time, there really is no family available. So I'm just curious about what social workers are thinking. Maybe they run out of things to talk about, and so then they just start coming up with stuff, because that's not a very wise comment. I mean, that's just going to create anxiety for a potential adoptive family who could then get anxious about adopting, period, and then maybe reconsider. So not that Emily and her family are doing that, but I'm just saying, I don't understand the thinking behind that. Now, so let me go ahead and follow that same vein. Would I suggest an open adoption at an early age for this infant? I would not. The problem that social services usually encounter, the same thing with the courts, is they stop focusing on best interest of the child and they start focusing on everyone else other than the child. It must be, in my professional opinion, it must be in the 100% best interest of the child before an adoption is open. And being someone who was adopted, I will say that unless the social services, the social workers, the courts, what have you, can prove that it is 100% in the best interest of this child to have an open adoption, if they can't prove that, no open adoption. This child must be given the opportunity to find security, must be given the opportunity to find predictability, consistency in their family. And that's the adoptive family. That is the family. Not sit back and forth because the biological parents were unable, incapable, inadequate, whatever, just not in a position to care for the child. If they're not in a position to care for the child and the child is 6 months, why subject the child emotionally to the inconsistency and unpredictability of the engagement with a biological family? That makes no sense to me. To me, it's much too stressful. You would have to have extremely mature biological parents before, in a biological family, before you would even consider. And since the child has already been placed for adoption and parents haven't been accessible, that tells you right away that level of maturity simply is not there. So in your situation, Emily, I would say unequivocally 100%, don't smack the social worker. Just breathe and just realize that they're probably just talking out of the side of their head. No, there's no open adoption. Don't even think about it. I mean, it's just like, what even does that mean? So there's that situation. Now you know how Big Papa feels about that. So now let's say it is a situation where there's some family circumstances that have occurred and a teenager has gone into foster care and now they are going to be adopted by a family and the biological family is still there. They're still around, but for whatever reason, they've not been able to get their act together in order to successfully care for the child. In a situation like that, with a teenager, again, it's still, is it in the best interest of the child? We have to stop thinking about the adults. You have no rights as a parent once you place your child up for adoption. Your opinion doesn't even matter. The only thing that matters is what's in the best interest of this child. And the people that they've been placed in the care of, can they provide for this child? And if they've been deemed satisfactory to care for this child, then that's what needs to be supported. However, if with a teenager, they have the ability, because they're a little further along in their cognitive and emotional development, to make some decisions about what they want to do. Ask the teenager, would you like to have an open adoption? So there's the possibility that you can continue to have some interaction with your biological family, stay in contact with them, but this is going to be your family, right? So that's an option at that point because of their stage of development. Sometimes even that's a precarious situation, but I'm a lot more likely, and again, it's because you have to understand that when adopted parents bring this child into their home, they're bringing a child into the home with a lifetime of trauma and stress and emotional challenges. They've got their work cut out for them. Just parenting, just being parents to the child alone is going to be more work and more effort than not. So then when you tie to that child the biological family, whatever dysfunctions they may have, you have to understand that not only are you taxing the child emotionally, but you are also putting additional pressure and stress on the adoptive family. Now, is that fair? Because really, who should be considered in the adoption scenario? It's the child, it's the adoptive family, and then whoever falls in line behind that. Because that is the secure base, right? That's the secure environment. First the child, then the adoptive family, and then whoever's behind. Everyone else's needs matter less and less and less. Maternal grandmother, maternal grandfather, paternal their needs don't matter at zero. Zero. It is adopted child, adopted family. That's where the focus and the intensity and the support need to be placed. Once you create security there, so this is important. Once you create security within the adoptive family, within the adoptive unit, the child is now going to be able to begin getting some of their emotional needs met, working through some of their loss and their griefs and some of their traumas. And as they get older and they reach more maturity, they have secure attachment. They feel securely bonded to their parents, or the parents are securely bonded to them. They feel securely attached to their parents. Now they have more of a secure base to build on. So when they get older, they have more of a secure base to build on when it comes to reconnecting with the family of origin. Because what are you going to do if the family of origin is still highly dysfunctional? Well, what are you going to do if the family of origin starts putting statements in the child's head that, you're going to come back and live with us and we're going to be a family again and all this kind of stuff. And then it starts to stress the child out emotionally. The child starts to act out in the adoptive home. And then pretty soon you have an adoption disruption. Now you have an adoption disruption. You think you're going to place that child back in that family of origin? Probably not, because if that was the case, if that was an option, the child would never have been in the adoptive placement to begin with. They would have been in a relative adoption placement. So we just have to be smart about these things. I mean, so much of it is like emotional intelligence and common sense. But unequivocally, the only person's needs that matter at the primary level is the adopted child. Secondary is the adoptive family. Third, fourth, fifth is the biological family. And here's the thing. When that child has successfully been able to reach 18, and they've successfully been able to mature, and they can and they're not even at that, remember, at 25 before the oral frontal cortex is fully developed. And later for children with severe, serious trauma and neglect and developmental challenges. But when they get a little older, then that child, because they have a secure base in their family, they have a home, they have a forever home. Because they have a forever home, they can then securely reach out to the biological family. And then if the biological family is mature and they're receptive and it's a positive experience, that's fantastic. Everyone wins. Everyone wins. But if there's still some existing trauma and some challenges there, then the child still has a family to be able to go back to. And they have more than anything, they have a secure base to be able to go back to. And that's what's important. And that's, to tell you, that's what happened in my own life. I, having been adopted at 3 months of age, I really was not interested in knowing who my biological family was, because I had a very secure base growing up. I always knew that my mom and dad were my mom and dad. Well, when I was 25, I got a little curious and I got a little information, but I didn't move any further from that point. And then when I was in my early 30s, I got a little bit more information. And it wasn't until 37 that I actually got really active and really interested in finding out. 37 years old. And really for me at that point, at that level of maturity, at that level of self-awareness, at that level of self-understanding, it wouldn't have mattered to me one way or the other whether my biological parents were healthy, loving individuals or completely dysfunctional. Because I was secure in who I was as an individual. And I was secure in my secure base of having a mother and father that I loved and who I knew loved me very much. It wouldn't have shaken my foundation at all. Now, I was fortunate that I did have two loving biological parents and have two loving biological parents, and I still have, and I have a relationship with them, and I have biological siblings and I have a relationship with them. And that's been fantastic. That's been very rewarding. But had it not worked out that way, I was mature enough at that point. I had a secure enough base and a secure enough foundation that it would have been fine for me. Now, the research says that as high as 80% of children who are reconnected with family of origins, biological families, actually end up having lifelong depression following the reunification, because it's never what the fantasy led it to believe. Now, that probably would have been a situation like with my sister, who's, best that we don't even know who her father was. Her mother had a lot of challenges. She probably fantasized and had some ideas about what that would have been like, and it probably would not have worked out to the level that she had probably fantasized about. So that's Big Papa's idea on the matter. Okay, Vicky. Vicky says she wants to join in, but she's in a meeting. You go handle that meeting, lady. All right, Stefan says, children are often placed around much like a piece of toy. We need to start realizing that they are not. Yes, that they deserve much, much more careful approach and respect. That is absolutely true, Stefan. And unfortunately, we are removing children from their family of origins at such a rapid pace. The whole system is stressed out. The whole system is overwhelmed. And so everything is driven by fear and not enough consideration and thoughtfulness and mindfulness. Number one is given to just family prevention. If we spent half, just a fraction of the dollars that we spend in removing children and getting children eventually ending up in juvenile probation systems, if we spent just a fraction of that money on helping families repair, helping families get educated, early prevention and intervention, and saving families and keeping children intact in their homes and wraparound services, then we wouldn't have nearly the number of disrupted foster home placements and adoptive placements that we see with children. And let me tell you, having been in the field for 20 years, it can be traumatic. It can be a horrible, horrible thing for a child to experience. It's bad enough they experience trauma in their family of origin, much less experience repeated trauma after being placed in care. And that's just what happens when we live in a system that is that's stressed out and fearful. So, Emily, I hope that answers your question, and I hope that gives you some peace of mind. And just keep loving that little person that you have, and just be the best parent that you can, and don't worry about anyone else. I've done expert testimony to the same point. And Emily did ask if there was a favorite book of mine that I like. And it doesn't really speak a great deal to open adoptions or closed adoptions. And I wonder if Rhonda has talked a lot about that. I might have to get Rhonda on and have her give her insights and impressions on that issue as well. But The Irreducible Needs of Children by T. Barry Brazelton and Stanley Greenspan is a very good book. Came out 15 years ago, but it's a classic book. And that's where I stand on, and I have cited in expert testimony before where they talk about a child in a home 6 months or longer should not be disrupted if absolutely not necessary. So that's it. Thank you guys for joining me. Remember, in any given situation, we always have two choices. We can continue to react from the same imprints, the same conditioning of stress and fear and overwhelm, or we can stop, we can slow down, we can take 3 to 10 deep breaths, and we can choose love. God bless you. Big Papa loves you. I hope when you lay your heads down tonight that you are embraced by that pillow and by that bed, and that in the morning you wake up refreshed, re-energized, reinvigorated, and most of all, restored and made whole back to your beautiful and loving self. We'll see you in the morning on Morning Motivation, or we'll see you tomorrow back here on Post Daily Dose. Good night, everyone.